Hi, it's Julie with Stitches of Love Quilting. Today we're going to talk about how to get yourself set up to do your applique stitch, which I like to use different stitches for finishing off machine applique. In this particular case, we're going to do a buttonhole stitch. Now with my buttonhole stitch, I like to use certain things. I like to use a 28 weight Aurifil thread on top, which comes with the, you can tell what it is by the gray spool top. Now this is a cone. Because I do so much of it, I sometimes try to save myself a little money and buy a cone. Generally it comes in these nice spools like this. This is considered a large spool and it will last you a very long time. Now in the bobbin, you want to use a 50 weight Aurifil thread or some other thread, but anyway, a 50 weight in the bobbin works nicely. The secret to this, though, is you must have a size 16 sharp needle. You want a size 16 because the hole in the needle is larger, so when your thicker thread runs through, it has enough room for it to pass nicely and form the stitch well without shredding your thread. If you find that your thread is shredding, sometimes it's the needle, the inside of the hole can have a little burr, or the hole is actually too small for the diameter of the thread. Who knew all this technical stuff? So anyway, when you start with one of your any machine applique, you want to work from what's behind first. So in this case, for instance, I'm going to start with the edge of the tree, and I'm going to do all around this bit of the tree because that's underneath. I'm going to do this part of the tree right here. It's also underneath. And then I'm probably going to move to the straight edge here on the thread, and then I will probably come around and do the bottom of the spool, top and bottom, the top and the bottom. I'll do both of those next. Then as far as the scissors, I would do the blades first and then the handles, the inner circle, which doesn't matter if you did that before or after, and then I would finish up with the top edge of the knot or the bolt. It's a bolt, really. Then if you have any decorative stitches to add, which in this case on the scissors there's a straight stitch coming right through the middle to separate the blades, and also through the handles to separate that, I would finish with that. And I also do that with the 28 weight thread. Now on your machines, most of us have newer machines now with various buttonhole stitches. You want to select a stitch that allows your feed dogs to constantly be moving back. In other words, it's not going to make your fabric go this way. When it does this, it's much more difficult to control. So I suggest you get a piece of fabric with some batting, make yourself a little sandwich, and try it out. You want a stitch that's going to go forward, 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 then jump in and out, forward, forward, in, out, forward, forward, in, out, forward, forward, in, out. It's always, your feed dogs are always moving back, which means your fabric's always moving forward, and therefore it's easy to control. Another tip I have with this is you want to be able to use needle up and needle down if your machine has that. Or if it doesn't, you want to make sure that when you stop, you end with your needle into the fabric. That's important because then you can pivot. When you're doing curves, you want to go in small bits and pivot a lot. If you have a knee lift on your machine, it's also helpful to use that because it makes it a little bit quicker. But I think the best tip I can give is if your machine has the ability to use a start-stop button with your thumb, that's much easier than doing a foot pedal, because you can keep your hand right here and jump back and forth from needle up, needle down. You can do your locking stitch. You can control your speed, everything with your hand. It's easier than your foot. Now back to the stitch. As I suggested, you should kind of make yourself a sample and play with it. I like to use about a 2 length and a 2.5 width on mine. It depends on what I'm doing. If I'm, like when I do this knot, I'm going to make it be smaller because smaller pieces warrant smaller stitching to look appropriate. It kind of keeps it proportional. So I'll start this little bit and give you a sample of showing this straight area down on this spool right here, because it's okay here to start there. I'm not going to mess up this little mug rug. So what you want to do is, if the camera can zoom in really close. Also, another thing I would suggest is try to have some really great light. I'm using a Stella light right here that I've clamped on. It's called a Stella Edge. It's clamped onto the edge of this little sewing table, and it provides a lot of extra light here. The older I get, the more light I need. Also need my bifocals. So anyway, here we are to start. I'm going to do the locking stitch. So it's going to lock that in place. I have this on fairly slow speed, and now here we go. Let me go a little slower, maybe you can, let's go to the slowest. And you'll see that it's moving forward. See, a couple stitches forward, and then it bites in. This machine is called an Eversone Sparrow 25. It's fairly new on the market, and I'm telling you, it is one of the best little guys ever. So now I've come to the end, and I'm gonna use my needle up, needle down to finish that stitch there, and then I'm gonna do the locking stitch. Needle up, and I'm gonna pull this out, trim my little threads here, and then whoops, there goes my finish mat. I like to keep a rather jumbo needle here just because it's simple to thread, and I'll thread this little guy, this tail, right through this jumbo needle really quickly, and then I poke it right down into the piece all the way through, and I do this for all ends. And oh my goodness, look what happened when I did that knot at the beginning. It's because I didn't hold my threads, but at any rate, don't look at that. But then tie your little knot. I do two little ties here. Even though the locking stitch was done, I like to do this because it's just a little bit more secure, and maybe I'm a little old-fashioned. This one just because it's a mess. And this is my sample. I'm just gonna cut that off. I'll snip this here too. So there's that nice little stitch. I don't know if you can see very closely, but it does have the couple little stitches in between, and then it jumps in to make the buttonhole stitch. Okay, so that's it for right now. Thanks for joining us.